Hi, welcome to the Clinton Mullins channel on YouTube. So I'm going to start this new series where I tell stories about my past bands I played in, famous people I met, all kinds of cool stuff. This first story is one of my favorites. It's about playing in a band called Screaming Sons of. Actually, the drummer was Nirvana's original drummer, Burckhard. And it all started while I was playing in Gebular. We were playing a bunch of shows, Nirvana memorial shows, and our lead singer Brandon had wrote a song called 27, and it was basically a tribute to Kurt Cobain. And throughout all this, I started meeting different Nirvana fans. I met Leland Cobain, which was Kurt Cobain's grandfather. Met all kinds of people, which we'll talk about in a different episode as well. And at a concert for Gebular at Hell's Kitchen, we were performing at the second Hell's Kitchen. There was two in Tacoma at one point, and we performed at both of them, but this was at the newer one before they closed. After the show, a friend of mine at the time, Mitch, introduced me to an individual. He was a little bit of an older gentleman and introduced himself as Nirvana's original drummer, Burckhard. And he asked me after the show if I'd play bass in a band that he was starting. And the first thing I said was no. I already play bass in Gebular, and I can't really imagine playing bass in another band. I'd love to play bass, but this is just the band where I feel most comfortable playing bass. So I was like, I'll play guitar, and we agreed on it. And I met up with him after that, and we discussed what we kind of wanted to do as a band. And I had a friend named Matt Watson who played bass and sang, incredible artist. And we recruited him to play with us. So we started practicing. We were practicing at Matt's place in Lacey, Washington, in a garage in a suburb. And we were doing Nirvana covers, originals that Matt and I were actually writing together. And there was a lot of chemistry. And these songs were turning out really cool. And at this point, our first show happened to be at Hell's Kitchen, the same one, opening for my band Gebular. And it was a great turnout. At this point, we kind of figured out that things were going to be, we were going to have some people come to our shows. And this was really neat for us. Nirvana's original drummer playing in a band again. I think people were really ready for it. And so it was bringing a following out. And then shortly after that first show, we had our second concert scheduled, which was at the Northwest Passage in Aberdeen. I had performed there previously in Gebular. Pretty much any band that's from Grace Harbor has played there. It's a place that you play. And we showed up, and our singer, bass player, wasn't there. So here we are with basically a sold-out crowd. It's a small bar, but there was a lot of people there to see us play that night, and Aaron's friends, family, and Nirvana fans alike. And I remember in the parking lot, Aaron came up to me, and he goes, "If you don't play tonight, I quit the band." And to be straight up, he wasn't really that nice about it. He said some other words in there. And being as starstruck as I was at the time, huge Nirvana fan, I'd never really sang in front of a crowd before. Singing wasn't really my thing. I didn't really want to sing. But I felt the pressure, and I took on the challenge. And actually at that show was Ryan Egner was there, which was Nirvana's first manager, a friend of the whole band. He pretty much knows everybody in the grunge world. And I remember getting on stage and not really knowing what to do. There's a microphone in front of me. I've screamed a couple backups here and there in Gebular, but I've never really sang in front of people. And so at this point, I did the only thing I could think of doing, and I screamed most of the set. We played a few Nirvana covers, and I had an extra guitar laying around, and I actually smashed the guitar on stage. And I remember at one point taking the guitar over my knee and like bending it while it was doing feedback, and it was like, woo, woo. It was really cool, and just having a great time. There's actually, I think, a YouTube video of me breaking that guitar. My brother posted. And then after that show, we had a really good response. I mean, it wasn't great, but the people that came out to see it really enjoyed what we did. And so we decided that we were going to keep performing. And so Aaron and I kept playing. And after that show, I ended up renting a house off old Highway 99 out past Tumwater. I think it was technically Olympia, kind of on a back road, Waldrick Road. It's basically on the way to Yelm. Like the back road would take you to like Rainier. And so I rented this house. It was like basically a mansion. For me, it was one of the nicest houses I've ever rented. The story behind it was an old senator's house, and it was moved from the Capitol to the land, and there was a bunch of cottonwood trees, and the house next to it, you might have heard of, was this old brothel. It's like a 7 or 8 bedroom, like pretty much mansion, who was the landlord who lived next door to us. And when we first moved into the house, there was actually a band set up in the second story, like in the back bedroom. And it was an interesting little spot, because that's where we ended up setting up our band gear. And the owner had seen Aaron, because Aaron was with me at one point, helping me load in and our stuff. And she had said she didn't want him to stay there. Well, Aaron's an older guy and smokes cigarettes, and I don't know really what the deal was, but she didn't want him there. Well, of course, I did it anyway, and I let him live with me, and we started jamming every day. And within that month of living there, I got a notice on the door that we had to vacate because, Aaron was living with us. They didn't want him to live with us. And also, we were jamming into the night pretty loudly. We actually wrote our song Crucifix upstairs in that jam room. And it was pretty interesting how we wrote that song. We would get really drunk and then just play for hours, and I would record everything we did. And then I was a driver at the time for as a caregiver, so I'd take people to their appointments during the day, and I would listen to these recordings. And in the middle of this, like 2 hours of nonsense, of just drunken jamming, I mean, it was bad. All of a sudden, we played Crucifix from start to finish, exactly how I play it and how I've recorded it. And it was almost like we stream of consciousness wrote that song on the fly. And the cool thing about how that song was written, it was very drum driven, kind of like how Bleach was. Aaron had always talked about how Bleach was heavy. He had a big part of writing a lot of those songs, like Floyd the Barber, where they had the drum lines that went right with the guitar. And so that's how that song was written, was a lot like an old Nirvana song, which was really cool. And after we got kicked out, I think Aaron went and stayed with Mitch again in Bonnie Lake. And so we were practicing up there in between, and there was bats in the house for like the last week. It was like a weird house, like in the middle of the night after we had been evicted and we had like 10 days to move. There was, the TV in the living room would just turn on and the volume would just start going up, 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 until it was like super loud in the middle of the night. And you could unplug it and it would still happen. It was just a really creepy house, definitely haunted. And I think Aaron experienced the most there. He didn't really talk a lot about it, but you could tell he was going through some stuff living there. And then we found a place off of Case Road, off exit 99 in Tumwater, which actually Gary Kohler at the time lived across the highway in this like in the woods basically, and he had like a couple trailers and he camouflaged them. He had a pit bull named Rita, and he had basically been camping there for years and getting away with it. And I remember he had like this black flag, of course, black flag on a tree. And it was a cool little spot. We would go down there and hang out. And then he had this little like miniature town that he was building called Kohlerville. That was really cool. And shortly after, so we stayed there for a while. I'll get into where I was about to go into in a second. And while we were living there, we needed to get a new bass player. So we took on my ex-sister-in-law, Jessica, as a bass player. And she'd played guitar, didn't really know a whole lot about music, but we needed a bass player. So we took her on as a bass player, and we were practicing in Elma in a storage unit at this point because we couldn't really practice at my house. We could, but we couldn't be too loud. And we started practicing in the storage unit where we wrote the song 8511 on 8511 inside that storage unit. And I wrote Zombie with Aaron around that time. And then we went into Robert Lang Studios and we recorded a 4-song EP in a weekend in 2011. And that was a really cool experience to get to go in there. Mr. Robert Lang actually gave us really good treatment. He gave us a personal tour. He was really excited that Aaron was there because Aaron, was in Nirvana, and You're Right was recorded there. And then also the first Foo Fighters record was recorded there. This was before Dave Grohl went back and did his recordings. So we were one of the first people with a Nirvana member to go back into the studio since the Foo Fighters record. And it was just a really good experience. And so after we recorded that, we never released it. I think we might have put it on an online SoundCloud or something to get shows, but we just never released it, never sold it at shows. We started playing at a place called the Shipwreck Tavern in Seattle with Grunge Tree, which is Jim Spence and a few other guys. And we're playing shows with them, which was really awesome. And then shortly after, I met Matt Lukin. He would come to our shows, and he was like really into what we were doing. Him and I joked around about starting a band. I actually almost started a band with him and Mike Dillard. That would have been interesting. The original drummer from the Melvins and the original bass player from the Melvins and Mudhoney, featuring Clinton Dogger Mullins, would have been an interesting band. But we would give him a ride home because he would drink. And usually Jessica would not drink, and then Aaron and I would get pretty drunk. And we were getting pretty good crowds out at these shows, and we were not that great, really. But we partied with everybody. And then we played the Mix, and one of my favorite shows at the Mix, we played there a few times. I brought a 30-pack of Busch and brought it into that back green room there. And we drank it all, and then went out on stage and played. And it was just a great night. I know that I was super hammered, and the rest of us were, but we had a good crowd, and everybody was just into it. And it was one of those moments. So at this point, we had basically been playing some shows, getting a following in the Seattle area, not really getting a following anywhere else. I started going back to college for my AA at the time, and Aaron and I just ended up having some issues I'm not really gonna talk about, but him and I are still friends, and he ended up moving out of my place, and after living with me for about a year. And he, besides music, he didn't do a whole lot. He would like to watch his TV and do his thing, which is understandable. And whenever the box set, the Nirvana box set came out, he got around $250,000 in royalties. And that was already all gone, spent on whatever he spent it on. And so he was still getting royalties from the box set, which would be like $200 or $300 every few months, or whatever it ended up being, which helped. It was something to put towards the bills. And then he ended up moving in with Gary Kohler down at Kohlerville, across from Exit 99, into this, basically this makeshift camp. And shortly after that, Gary had passed. And when Gary passed, I knew that Aaron would be coming to the memorial, which I was going to be performing at the time with my drummer at the time, which was Scotty. And we were just performing as Dogger, playing a lot of the Screaming Sons of songs and other songs as well. And I knew Aaron was going to be there, and I knew Dave Foster was going to be there, who was also a Nirvana drummer. So we go to the Gary Kohler's memorial that we were booked to perform at, and I set up 3 drum sets, one for my drummer I had at the time, Scotty Karate, and then one for Aaron and one for Dave Foster. And so Aaron's down to play. Dave didn't know he was down to play yet, but he'd been drinking. Everybody was. It was pretty hard to lose a friend because Gary Kohler was an awesome guy. He was just very likable, very, very fun dude to be around. And so we're getting on stage, getting ready to play, and Dave Foster is up front stage, and I hand him a set of drumsticks, and I'm like, we're on. It's our turn to play. Here you go. And he just gives me this look like, I'm playing? And so he takes the drumsticks and gets on stage and plays the whole set with us. So I had 3 drummers for that whole set and 2 Nirvana, ex-Nirvana drummers performing with me, which was really cool. And then at the end of the set, I used to break a lot of guitars. So at the time, Dave Foster thought that I meant wanted him to break my guitar. And so he grabs my guitar, it was an ESP at the time, and throws it across the stage and breaks it. And I don't think he even knew he did until the next day, but he ended up, no, it wasn't an ESP, it was my Schecter, because he ended up buying me an ESP and letting me borrow a really nice BC Rich for a while, which is kudos to him. That's pretty cool to, have something like that happen and then hook me up with a guitar and then buy me a guitar, especially when I put him in that situation of performance when he was that drunk. But it was a great show, and it was just it was a great way to remember Gary Kohler too. Like, I know that when it comes to punk rock and grunge, he is that to me. That's what I think of. I know Kurt Cobain is like the grunge god or whatever, but people like Gary Kohler that were underground didn't get a lot of attention for what they were doing. He had some amazing things that he created music wise that was just great, from the band Attica to Psycho Samaritan. So right before he passed, I had actually got hit up on Facebook from the director for Soaked in Bleach. So Soaked in Bleach director hits me up asking about Aaron. And this would happen to me a lot. Being in a band with Aaron, you'd have people making documentaries, or Nirvana fans would hit me up a lot to try to get a hold of him. And I mean, he's straight up a celebrity, and people would seek him out. And we would a lot of time make time and go down to Aberdeen and maybe do a little tour where we went out to the Kurt Cobain Park, before it was really even a park at this point. It was just the beginning stages when the neighbor there, Tori, was building it. And we'd bring people there and they'd get to meet Aaron. It was a really cool situation. And then, I was basically the contact for Soaked in Bleach for Aaron to get on that documentary. And they were going to film our band, Screaming Sons of, but right around this time, our band basically broke up. And so they filmed, I believe it was Psycho Samaritan for the piece, which was perfect for that movie. Because Gary Kohler, he was around during that whole time. I wasn't. I'm kind of a newcomer in that whole situation. Yeah, I'm a huge Nirvana fan, but it just worked out better that way. So, but it was really cool to be a part of that. And then I got some notes I'm reading here. And so after that, before he moved, actually, slightly before, I got a little story I left out. We had a gig, a really strange gig at Seven Feathers Casino in California. So my family was having a family reunion and we got invited to perform. We show up with all our gear in a minivan, drive all the way down there, and my family members are from Virginia on my Mullins side, and they're straight up like, "You gonna play some country?" And, you know, Aaron and I look at each other like, yeah, Screaming Sons of is not gonna work in this crowd. It's definitely, I mean, the full name, technically, what Aaron named the band is Screaming Sons of Satan Sperm. And that isn't going to go over very well for this crowd. So we end up deciding not to perform. And I regret it, but I left him there with my parents to get a ride home. It's quite the journey, but him, my dad, and they all get along really good, so it was fine. And I drove to Reno. This is what I regret. I drove to Reno with my girlfriend at the time and got married. Thankfully, I'm divorced now, but that was what we did. And then that was pretty much the end of Screaming Sons of. And from this day to this day, I still see Aaron in Aberdeen. You'll see him walking over on the Felony Flats, which is B Street over by the Kurt Cobain Memorial Park. And of course, I stop and I say hi. And I mean, we still have love for each other. And we'll say something like, yeah, we need to jam. And, you know, the normal thing past band members usually say to each other. And I really miss him. And I know that he misses jamming. And that was something that we really had an awesome time together. And songs like Crucifix, Zombie, Go Away, even Penetrator. Those songs all were core songs from jamming with Aaron. And I'm thankful for jamming with him as well, because it taught me the roots of really the heavy music I perform. Now I don't perform that style of music as often, which the music that Screaming Sons of was playing kind of morphed into the band Fishing with Bigfoot. Yeah, I performed it as Dogger, but Fishing with Bigfoot's an album that I put out. I don't actually have it out. I think I have some on Reverb Nation. Maybe the whole album on reverbnation.com/fishing with Bigfoot, but I do plan on releasing that on YouTube and everything. But it's a great album with the guys from Gebular, featuring Mike Johnson and his brother Chris. They were in a band called Doink back in the day from Bremerton. Just great musicians. Now they're in multiple bands from Grays Harbor. But the Fishing with Bigfoot project wouldn't have turned out what it turned into without Aaron Burckhard. So that's pretty much my story for jamming with Nirvana's original drummer and becoming friends with him. Basically family. We're family at this point. And performing shows together. I appreciate you watching the channel. And I'll be bringing up other stories like this. I'll be talking about being friends with Leland Cobain. While he was still alive, he was a very unique individual, a gentleman. He took in Nirvana fans into his own home and was just an amazing human being. And I'll be also bringing up other stories about different people that I've crossed paths with. I would like to do some stories about different tours I've done and just different experiences. But I really appreciate you guys watching this, and hope you can click the subscribe button and keep following for all kinds of random weirdness. Thank you. So I almost forgot this story. So Screaming Sons of was performing at the King Cat Theater Lounge before the King Cat Theater got leveled out, and I think they built like apartments, or I don't really know. So we're performing there, and on the flyer, it had a picture of a guitar being broke. Of course, we were kind of known for that at this point. So I bring a guitar to break, and at the end of our set, I start smashing a guitar, and this little stage is basically like particle board, and I'm basically chopping wood. Big old hole in the stage. And at the end of the show, the promoter, who I'll leave unnamed, locks us in the venue. And he comes up to us and he's like, "You got to pay for the stage. There's a hole in the stage now. I'm calling the cops." And I didn't want to go to jail, which probably wouldn't have, but I was a little bit worried. We'd all been drinking, and I didn't have any money. We didn't get paid. I didn't have a dime to my name after I had paid for gas to give to this promoter. And then whenever I look at Aaron had $20 in his pocket and hands this individual $20 so that he would unlock the venue doors and let us leave without calling the police. So this is at the King Cat Theater, probably 2012, 10 years ago, where we got locked in the venue because we put a hole in the stage breaking a guitar when the show's flyer had a broken guitar on it. I mean, they had to have known we were coming to chop some wood. Just saying.